Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome to Satsang. So good to have you all here. And got started a little late because there's a little noise going on. And if you notice from the title, I didn't have a subject that came to mind in advance as to what I would talk about as I was waiting for people to arrive. But I happened to notice as the comments were coming in that Crispin made a comment about his meditation, a question about his meditation. So I thought, even before I answer the question, that maybe we would all start together by doing a meditation together, a non-dual contemplative meditation, which would be both a meditation and an inquiry. So let's all kind of get in the mood. Just kind of relax your body, settle in. If you've got other things going on, just set them aside. Set aside your coffee or your tea for a moment. Close your eyes and just sink into that sensation of your body. Just the flow of sensations that makes up the experience that we call body. And now I want you to just set aside for a moment all your thoughts about the past. Going back to the beginning of time and up to 1 second ago. Just anything thought that has to do with the past, just set it aside. Just leave it outside for a moment. Now, they will pop up, of course, it's okay. It's simply a decision, a choice to not engage with it for a little bit of time here. Just set it aside. And any residual of the past that's happening right this moment, any feelings or sensations you have in your body, let the sensation be there because you can't stop it. But again, don't engage with any thought about it. No attempt to figure it out. No attempt to get a solution. Anything that refers to you, your condition, your life in this moment, just set it aside. We're not engaging in any of that for a moment. We'll engage later. Just for now, we're just here. Just now. No questions, no answers, no inquiry, no analysis. And now set aside the future. Aspirations, desires, what you'd like your life to be like, what you'd like the world to be like. Even the desire for enlightenment. Just put that away. Let the future take care of itself. So that you're completely here and completely empty. Now you can watch thoughts come and go. Not a problem. And notice that they do just come and go. No thought just sits there. In fact, if you've ever tried to hold a single thought, you can see how difficult it is. It's like trying to hold a river or the wind. You can't really do it. The same is true of our emotions, and it's right even in the word emotion. Just this feeling of internal energy that we call emotions. And sensations. Just notice your whole body is nothing but a conglomerate of sensations. And also notice those sensations are not static. If you put your attention on the sensation of your foot, for example, notice that it's not a constant. There's just It too is a flow. It's constantly refreshing itself. So all of these are in a flow. They're coming and going. They're coming and going. Now see if you can take a step back into that place of just the pure witnessing of the coming and the going. And notice none of those things come and go to themselves. Thoughts aren't sentient. Emotions aren't self-aware. Sensation, emotion, and thought can only exist in the presence of you. Separate from you, they have no existence whatsoever. They are completely dependent upon you to be. And they are not aware of you. You are aware of them. And just notice this fact, this simple, self-evident fact. Thoughts, your emotions, and your sensations are not self-acting because there's no self there. There's no consciousness, there's no sense of I. Even the thought I is not self-aware. It's just an appearance. It's the flow. All of the awareness belongs to you, the one to whom it is all appearing. Now, with the removal of all of that, the past, the present, the future, not engaging with it, as past, present, and future are nothing but thoughts, what's left? What remains? Well, it's you, for sure. You're there, still. But as what? You're not a thought. You're not an emotion. You're not a sensation. And since those three make up all there is to any experience, you are not an experience. You are not something you can experience because you are not coming and going. Again, this is self-evident. It's not an affirmation. It's not imagination. We don't need any imagination here. It's a seeing. It's a witnessing. You're just being with this capacity to be consciousness. The consciousness of the sensation because it has none. Same with emotion and sensation. So you're just here. You are very much here. But as what are you here? This is the inquiry part of it. The mind will, of course, say, well, you're this body, you're this life, you're this history. But we've left history and all sensation outside. So all there is to the body is a flow of sensation. And you're not that. So then what are you? This is simply consciousness itself. But we're talking about consciousness itself, awareness itself, pure beingness itself. The mind immediately jumps in to make it something that you are experiencing or witnessing or talking about. But is it anything different from you? Is it not you who are the consciousness in which sensation is appearing? Is it not to you whom it appears? Now stay disengaged from the mind, because the mind, its flow of thoughts, its habitual energy, cannot grasp this oneness. Now, from here, in this place of pure awareness, does it really matter? Is it of any great importance what particular form a thought might take? Particular form an emotion might take, whether it be intensely ecstatic, very, very happy and joyful, or very, very sad, grief, even fear. From here, does it have any additional meaning other than it is a flow moving through awareness, appearing to awareness, and it moves right through, just like clouds in the sky. Without a thought that says, this emotion is important, it's got a history, or I wish it wasn't here. If that thought never occurred, could it have any staying power? Even the words we use, happy, sad, grief, joy, fear, concern, even those words came later. Wasn't there just a sensation, a feeling that just vibrated through the system? And you don't actually need words to feel that. Children and animals are like that all the time. They feel it, and yet there are no words for it. No story about it, pure experience. And so from here, is it of the least bit of concern to you, the self, the actual conscious being to whom it is all appearing? As I start to bring us out of this little meditation, I want you to notice something very important. That no matter what's happening, no matter how engaged you may become with the mind and all experience, you never leave here. Engagement is nothing other than the focus of attention. So yes, it can get all wrapped up in thoughts and what I've got to do during the day and the like. But do you ever leave this place of the witnessing awareness? Are you any place other than that? Is this a place you have to get back to? Or is this a place you never leave? You cannot leave yourself. Attention can wander, but it's always reporting back to the same place. which is you. So take a deep breath. Move your body, the flow of sensations. There really isn't even a body, not really. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And it's great to be with you all. So I'm going to check in with everyone now. Hello, Crispin. I'll get to your question in a second. There's Ursula in Madeira Island, Portugal. Lisa is on the East Coast. Dorte in Denmark. Roberto, we're in Granada. What a great job you got. Robbie in Romania. There's Ava. So good to be with you too. Hello, Carl in Ireland. John in Scotland. My goodness. So, Crispin, why do I feel both calm and free? Calm and fear more intensely the more I meditate. Greater calmness, of course, is just fine, but that increasing fear seems to cancel it again, and vice versa. Where is this going? Well, to that, in the meditation, the awareness of something is forever transcendent to that something. So both calm and fear appear to exactly the same essence, the same consciousness, which is you. The mind says calm is preferable to fear. And in common experience, yes, of course it would be. But we're not looking at it just from the common experience. We're deconstructing this down to get to the essence of who you are. And to who you are, the arising of fear or the arising of calm are of equal import. It has no preference. It has no reaction. When an image strikes your eye does not react to it, whether it be this one most beautiful thing you have ever seen or something horrible, grotesque. The eye doesn't go, ooh. The eye has no reaction to it whatsoever. It has no preference for what it experiences. And so when the light strikes it, the eye is unmoved. It takes it in. Now notice that without awareness, even the eye cannot see. There has to be something there to receive it. And so the awareness is aware of whatever it is that is felt or seen or sensed. That is the consciousness that animates all of this. It's only consciousness that sees, right? Your hand doesn't see you, you see your hand. Sensations don't feel you, you feel them. So you are the consciousness, the point of cognition for everything. What you're also experiencing is when particular images hit the eye, that's not the end of the journey. It goes through all sorts of layers of filtering, both at the level of sensation in the body, the level of emotions, and the level of thought, till it finally comes up to an image that is constructed based on conditioning and past experiences. So now the experience that is had takes on a meaning that is not in the actual experience itself. Did you follow that, everyone? The actual experience is simply, boom, very simple, direct, right to the perceptual mechanism. And the same experience could be looked at by multiple people, by kids, animals, all sorts of different kinds of critters, right? And the response or reaction to it will have nothing to do with the thing itself. That's all a result of our conditioning and our patterns and our thought patterns. But notice that awareness is aware of all that too. So the whole structure and flow of human life, which has to include conditioning. So remember, without conditioning, we talk a lot about the the negative conditioning, the conditioning that gets in our way. But conditioning is also responsible for the fact that I can talk to you without having to think every single step, figure out how to move my mouth on every step, move my hands, feed myself, walk, dance, play an instrument, ride a bike. All the stuff we take for granted is also conditioning. But the conditioning of thought into a sense of identity, right, creates a relationship with the experience. So now this experience is okay, this one isn't. And so the bottom line is, I would say, just say, let it come. Don't worry about it. The deeper our meditations go, the more space there is inside of us, the more stuff is going to come up and going to trigger reactions. Be aware of the sensation that comes up. It's fear. Be aware of the reaction to it, the interpretation mind puts on it. It says, oh, God, I wish this wasn't here. What's going on? Let's see. Did I miss something here? Oh, it just hopped down to the bottom. Yeah. Yeah, the calmness. Well, that's cool. But fear, what about that? That's the mind, isn't it? Now take another step back and don't be the I that's trying to decide, choose the preference between one or the other. Notice that the I that's saying calm is okay, fear is not, is also being observed. It is also part of the conditioning. It is also part of the functioning. And that when you see it as such, the I comes out of that thought of I and back into the actual I, which is the witnessing awareness. Did you follow that? Did everyone follow that? It's very subtle, but this is how the mechanism works. And we're just so used to identifying with the I that has preferences, we don't recognize that it itself is a product of conditioning and not who you are. And you can tell it's not who you are because you can observe it. Anything you can see or experience or perceive cannot be you. And you, because you are one, cannot experience yourself. So if it can be experienced, it's not you. And you cannot be experienced. I'll leave it at that. Hello, Diane in the UK. Excuse me. Okay. Karen. Hello, G and all. Can you please talk about desire and pleasure? Thank you. Ah, yes. I most certainly can. If there's more to this, if there's more you'd like to know or something that's troubling you about it, let me know. But in general, desire is just another experience of life, right? At a very primitive level, life is driven by fear, which is simply the sensation of self-protection. Right? It is moved. The energies that move life are fear and desire. Now, in its purest form, fear is simply a momentary response to a threat. Animals don't live in fear. They don't have a mind to imagine things going wrong, so they don't experience anxiety or worry. If something comes up, if something pops up in the environment that they instinctively recognize as dangerous, that the body goes into a state of flee, getting away from it, and the feeling of that is what we call fear. They don't label it as fear. They just respond to the impulse. We label it because we can feel fear when there's nothing to be afraid of. Right? Now, I preamble that because the other side of that is desire, which is what? Fear is I need to get away from it. Desire is I need to get to it. And of course, you can see that life needs both of these in order to exist. Right? It has to be self-protective and it has to be self-satisfying. It has to reach for the shiny objects. Were it not for desire, none of us would be here. Our moms and dads had desire for each other. Hopefully they had a good time with it. And now we're all here having this conversation. So when we look at it like that, desire and fear are pure and innocent. There's nothing wrong with them. But now, culturally speaking, what happens is a society, in order to control people, instills fear, right? You should be afraid of this, and we, the social the social definition, the cultural definition, will protect you from it, right? So you're now kind of attached to the society, and at the same time, it controls desire. It gives boundaries on it. You can't do that. Anything beyond that is sinful. And these are just the arbitrary definitions that happen to emerge. Different societies have different versions of that, right? And one of the things that's happening in our world is all of those definitions have fallen apart. We have no confidence or faith or belief in the social structure that we've created, which means they're going to fall because there's nothing to sustain them anymore. And when they get to that point, it becomes more and more pressing more and more fear and more threats, and exercising more and more constraints and power. But let's not just look at our own experience, our personal experience of desire. A desire arises, and here's what happened. The desire is natural. It's just a part of life. It's going to happen, like the wind blowing, right? Or having a little cough, right? It just happens. You don't create it. It's not personal. You don't sit there somewhere making up what your desires are going to be. It's just natural to life, and so it will spontaneously arise. Now, when it does spontaneously arise, the question is always, into what environment does it arise? Depending on your conditioning, it will be received with a great deal of joy and fun. This is wonderful. Or it will be resisted and pushed away. This is terrible or sinful and the like. And so the desire itself is pure and innocent, but the environment in which it appears is inevitably conditioned in some way, so that a desire then takes on a certain meaning. Now, if you can simply bring, like I did in the meditation, come back to that place where you're simply witnessing it, and you don't have an attachment to it. You know, it's two ways. There's the sin, get away. The other, oh my God, I have to have that or I'll never be happy, right? Both of those are inaccurate. One is attachment, the other is aversion. And both of those are what create the suffering around it. To the degree it can be suppressed so badly that even a desire arising becomes painful instead of just a natural thing. You don't see that in children. A desire arises, they go right for it. There's no editing or censoring of it. Right? So if you're in that meditative, contemplative place that I took you, and a desire arises, or you can bring to mind a desire you had before, right? Be with it and dismantle all the thoughts about it. Right? The thought says this is wrong. Well, it can't be. It just happened. It just arose spontaneously. It's as natural as breathing. Then I thought, well, what do we do with it? I've got to get it. Well, that's not really true either. Remember, if you didn't create a desire, you're not responsible for it. Every desire, it's like the cells in your body, right? There's 50 to 100 trillion cells in the human body, depending on your size and shape and that sort of thing. In addition, there's trillions upon trillions more of tiny bacteria and and all sorts of little things, right? I mean, we don't digest our food. The bacteria that lives there does, and the acid breaks it down. And there's bacteria everywhere that's doing this little job to make up this functioning of the body. Each one of those is a living being that has its own destiny, its own life cycle. Some things, their whole entire life lasts 24 hours. For others, I think the largest is like 15 years that some cell in the body. But other than that, everything has turned over, right? Which means I've been through a lot of bodies at this point, 5 to 10. complete makeovers, right? Complete renovations. So I'm using that as the analogy that you don't control the destiny. You don't say, oh my God, my stomach wall lining cell, I've got to take care of that. What am I going to do with that? I can't live without that. We don't do that. It's happening automatically. On an energetic level, a desire is exactly the same thing. It's a living being. It has its own life cycle. It has its own destiny, has its own purpose. It may fulfill itself in whatever it is it's supposed to fulfill. It may not. Its only purpose may be to come up long enough to bring about a change in the environment so the next desire has a better place to be. We cannot determine what the life of it's going to be. The desire is there. All we can do is just embrace it, let go of it, let it have its own life, and simply create an environment in which it is free to be whatever it needs to be, which is exactly what we want for ourselves, right? That's what we want for our children. That's what we wished we had when we were children, where we're just safe to be yourself. This is just all part of unconditional love and the self-love that opens up that inner space that brings healing, and also is the path to deep spiritual awakening, because you're literally clearing away all of the assumptions about yourself and about life, which once cleared away, the field is clear for the reality of your being to appear. So hopefully that's a comprehensive look into the the very natural world of desire. Hopefully that did it for you, Karen, and then I might have answered any specific question you have. Let me just see if there was another. Nope. Okay, cool. Very cool. Hello, Tatiana. Hello, Dave and Elaine. Good to see you both. There's Peter in Italy. Carl, Chai GP, I loved your prayer workshop. It brought much peace. I'm meeting a lot of disappointment when observing sensations caused by lack of physical presence, e.g., by a parent, parent being absent during important times, or lack of affection, comfort during important times as a child. Observing this disappointment seems to cause more frustration. Is there a stage before the observing that I could use on these issues? Many thanks. Yeah. To deepen our inquiry, we observe the sensations, right? But you're also observing the cause of them. Now, this is important because the sensation is just there, right? Now, if the sensation itself reveals that its origin was a lack of physical presence, then you simply embrace that as a revelation from the energy itself, and you give it space to simply resolve itself, because that's all it needs. Now, if that sensation comes up and it is the mind's interpretation and analysis of it because of its psychology or self-help or something that says, this was caused by a lack of physical presence, it's actually going to perpetuate it. Now, this isn't to say that, of course, if key things that we need as children we didn't get, it is going to create a certain distortion of the energy within the system because it had to compensate for not getting that, right? So what didn't it get? It didn't get the affection or comfort during difficult times. Well, you're not a kid anymore, can't come from your parents. Where's it going to come from? Well, it's going to come from you. That's right. So when that feeling comes up, right, and even the frustration, that frustration you're feeling is also that same energy as a child not being able to get what it needs and knowing full well what it did need, instinctually, not conceptually, not intellectually, but instinctually. It knew it needed that. And it didn't get it. So what happens? The nervous system, being brilliantly creative, begins to compensate for it, suppress feelings, push things away, You can't express frustration towards your parents. That's dangerous. It makes it even worse. So that gets kind of pushed to the side. So as you're giving it space, this stuff can come up. But the best way to say to cause more, is there a stage for the observing that I could use? The stage during the observing is keep your attention on the sensation, the feeling itself. And notice if the mind wants to comment on it. But you, when you become adept at this, you can sense, you can tell when what's coming up about it is the mind simply analyzing it and interpreting it according to how it's learned to do that, or it's actually a revelation coming from the energy itself. Now, you don't need to know the origin of these things in order for them to pass through the system and be healed. You don't. You just create the environment. If this energy that you're allowing to move now, that couldn't be allowed to move back then, now you've given it that space. If it needs to tell you the story about what happened and why, because it's the only thing that actually knows. The mind guesses according to statistics and stuff that it's learned. It doesn't really know. The only thing it does know is the energy. It knows why it was put into that position, and it knows how to get out of it. So the more you pay attention to the sensation itself and the less to the mind, the bigger the space it has in which to move and free itself. Because once it sees that it does not need that to compensate anymore, and that it is in a safe environment, and that now it is getting that, the very same energy that needed as a child is still there now. You create that space and it responds to it. The fact that it happened back then simply means that it got postponed. Our needs as adults are exactly the same. We need the same space. We need the same acceptance. We need the sense of presence when we need it. But with a more mature spiritual consciousness, we can see that we are that for ourselves all the time, and we're not dependent upon someone external to create that for us. It's nice when they're there, good relationships and that sort of thing. It's very nice, but ultimately that space has to be created by yourself, within yourself, because right now you're the one containing it. by thinking I've got to get it out there somewhere. Well, you don't have to. No, you're it. So just give it to yourself, which you are. The very fact that you're doing this, the observing itself, by withdrawing more and more from the opinions about what is happening into a pure observing, that creates the safe space. There's no more opinions. There's no more rights and wrongs. There's no more preference. This should be here. This shouldn't. There's no more. You'll even let go of the blame for your parents, the frustration. All of it has a safe place to come and express itself just as it needs to. And when it does, it has fulfilled its destiny and will then just kind of fold and dissolve back into the infinite space out of which it came. Does that answer it for you, Carl? Hopefully. Hi, Anne. Good to see you too. Jojo loves it. Hello, fellow friends of G. Lots of love for Johanna in the USA. Thank you so much for that meditation. You're very welcome. Very welcome. Oh, Jojo, I like that. Kieran. Hello, Kieran. Good to see you. There's Susanna. Good evening. Tuning in for Spiritual Revolution. Good evening from Gozo. Let's see. Kingdale Clark. Hi, GP. Hi to you. Hi to you and all. Rosario in Madrid. Jerry's Chubren. Hello to you. I'm an engineering student and I'm burnt out. Do you have any tips on how I can recover from burnout? Yeah. Yes, indeed. Well, there's a lot of practical things you can do. And I know as a our culture has put an enormous amount of pressure and stress on us. I was listening to a guy talking yesterday about history of work, and for the majority of human life, we worked 15 hours a week, and it was in that spare time of the rest of the time. I'm talking about the whole hunter gatherer thing, like 15 hours a week. That was it for the majority of our history. And during that period of time, we invented art, language, all sorts of things we invented because we weren't completely engaged in the need for survival. Even during the period of time, the serfs and the vassals, right? The aristocracy that owned it, the serfs had to work the land. It was seasonal. Even then, I think in Spain during the medieval period, 5 months of the year they didn't work. They didn't do anything. they had enough for that period of time, and so our whole model of work is based on this idea of infinite growth and consumerism and get more, which has become just a universal insanity. So what you are experiencing is how that whole idea affects the educational system which you are now in, which expects the same kind of thing about you. And it's going to spit you out and send you out to some job where you're going to have to work at least 40 hours a week. But for most people, that's even more now. All right. So in the meantime, what do you do? Right? Since we can't change the system as a whole. Again, on a practical level, which is like a really good place to address this, watch what you eat, right? Make sure you're always eating healthy foods. When you get really like studying that sort of stuff, we end up eating crap. Usually, if you're in university and eating in the cafeteria, it's contracted out to somebody, and the food is crap. Get good food consistently in your body and take the time to do that. Make sure you're getting exercise, walking around, riding your bike to class or something, like jogging to class or something, like any way you can fit it in. Give yourself breaks during the day, even if it feels like you're under a deadline. And then start watching your mind as to where it's putting pressure on you, where it's feeling like, oh God, you're not going to get this, right? Man, this is so hard. Those are all thoughts. And you simply don't allow them into the conversation. You recognize that it is just a thought. It is a belief. If you believe it, it will come into the nervous system and it will start acting, and there'll be stress and tension and all sorts of stuff. Right? But that stress and tension isn't caused by the truth of that thought. It's caused by your belief in that thought. And so the entire process can become spiritual inquiry simultaneously. Another little recommendation I'll make is practicing mindfulness. When you sit down to eat, right, you make yourself something to eat, make healthy food to eat. Don't be reading a book. Don't be surfing the net. Don't be checking out Facebook. Don't be doing anything, right? When you eat, just eat. I've taken on the discipline because I noticed I was eating faster, right, and doing a lot of stuff. So what I do now is I sit down, and to eat, I prepare something, and I sit down to eat. I take a bite, and I set the fork down. This is especially with salad. I eat a lot of salad because it takes longer to chew. And just sit there. Slow everything down. Slow your whole system down. So that when it does have to speed up and do a lot of stuff, that won't be a constant, which is where the stress is. You'll learn how to get into that mode where it has to be there and then drop out of that mode like a sprinter, right? And sometimes it's a marathon. But, a great deal of preparing for the marathon is the right amount of rest in between training and all of that. And so that the burnt out is simply means, what burnt out means is the attention has been so forced to one place, right, that there's just not enough energy there anymore to sustain it. You need to fill up the energy reserves to be able to sustain it again. And so that's all it means. It means that pressure has kept all of the energy going into one place and it's just drained it. And there's been no fresh energy being generated. And so all of these little tips I've given you, right, which all lead, by the way, to a sense of inner care and inner safety that is deep, that is a big part of the spiritual journey as well. All of those things will provide the space in which the energy can be replenishing itself. And in fact, you'll actually get more done in less time when there's adequate energy for it. It's just one of the big myths of our time that you just kind of work yourself to death, right? I mean, Elon Musk likes to brag about working 80 to 100 hours a week, and that's why he's a billionaire, which is nonsense. It's absolutely nonsense. It's a billionaire because he came up with with an idea uh, that resonated at the time. That's like saying Jeff Bezos works really hard. I mean, what did he do? He opened an online bookstore. That's not a huge contribution to humanity. And you know, the truth is, the CEO of a major corporation works about 25 hours a week. Spend a lot of time doing stuff, meetings, and flesh printing, and they're totally absorbed into it constantly. But the actual amount of work isn't that big. So, yeah, kind of, it's a taking of authority of your own life to the degree that you can. When you're a student, obviously, you have to meet the requirements of the school, so that you get the degree and all of that kind of stuff. But keep bearing in mind that this is a time for us to be creating a new kind of world, a new kind of work environment. Right? I think all work environments should be owned by the people that work there. Period. I think there should be democracy in the workplace. I don't think there should be public markets and Wall Street and all in capitalism. It should all be cooperatives, which work quite well, actually. So anyway, that's just a little bit of a side. Does that help, Jerry's? Jerry's Chubran. Yeah. Ah, fantastic. Fantastic. If it didn't, let me know. I'll try to do it some more. Play on. Hi, G. This Friday I was on a date with a girl that I really liked. The thing is, when I like someone, I get very honest. So I started to talk about non duality. Now I believe I maybe freaked her out a bit. Well, if you totally freaked her out, there won't be a next date, right? It's pretty simple. If there is, then you didn't totally freak her out. And you just might say, I'm really excited about that subject, so I talk about it a lot of all the time. It's okay. We don't have to talk about that. I mean, if you're really interested in it, well, cool. We will. But if not, there's plenty of other things I can talk about. But it's really what turns me on, right? It really, this is a very important part of my life, and it's a way you can just kind of step back from it and say we could talk about something else, or follow her lead. Whatever she starts talking about, you just kind of pick up on it, right? There's a you didn't ruin it, right? And of course, if she really isn't into it, or she's totally afraid of it, um, then present it in a different light if you can, or you really like her, just 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 see where it goes, right? It could be just a nice recreational thing for a while, or it could go deeper, right? But these are the kind of things, one of the scary things about relationship is when we're just our totally enthusiastic selves, and then we get afraid that just being myself, right, is going to get me rejected. And this is one of the most difficult things in relationships, because if you are yourself, that's the only way you can guarantee that at some point you will get genuine intimacy, because it will be you that is accepted. And that fear of rejection makes us kind of put up a front, kind of put a, kind of soft pedal things, hide some kind of stuff. And it's not like you should just lay it all out there, lay everything out there on a first date. I don't know how many dates you've had, little by little, it has to come out. But don't be afraid if you just get overly enthusiastic. That's who you are, right? That's who you are. And if not her, somebody will very much appreciate that and really love that enthusiasm, and that will be, and you'll feel that. But also, when we're used to not really being that expressive, we let ourselves get that expressive, right? I don't know what the dynamic was between the two of you, but I believe I maybe freaked her out. Well, put that thought aside, right? And speculating about it, because you don't need to, right? If you ask her out again and she says no, well, that's it. Then maybe you did, but that might not even have been the reason, right? If she doesn't go on another date with you, it may have nothing to do with that, right? It may be because you wore a blue shirt and her father used to yell at her and wore a lot of blue shirts, and she's completely unconscious of that reaction. So we don't know, right? What freaks people out. It can be tiny little gestures and the like. So don't speculate, right? Just move ahead. You are into her, right? You really like her, so just keep moving in that direction. If she keeps going with you, all is well. And don't try to edit yourself so terribly, just worrying about the reaction you're going to get, right? This is what we do as children, right? We're constantly editing because of the reaction we're going to get, right? And the whole point of spiritual liberation is to free that. So you're not doing that anymore. You're not editing. So that just whatever it is that is to be expressed within you has an open space in which to do it. And so I'll leave it at that. I hope that helps. That's really beautiful. That's really beautiful. I'd like to see the quality of relationships vastly improved, and they will, because right now all the old rules about relationships have fallen apart. They don't hold anymore. We're kind of writing a new book, and it's always kind of clumsy when we're trying to find our way. Make a map of a territory nobody's ever been to before. So we're all cartographers now. Tatiana, together with lots of crying, a question popped. What all of this is about? What is all of this about? Being a being in this life on this planet. It was a deep yearning to get an answer. Nothing came so far. Any comment? Stay with the deep yearning. This is the earnestness that will get the answer. The answer, when you say the answer isn't coming, what it means is that, remember, your mind is looking for an answer to come in a form that the mind is used to seeing, which is some kind of dialectic or intellectual or conceptual form that says, oh, this is why, right? But just notice, if something like that comes, just check, see, is it a satisfying answer? The spiritual inquiry is being with the question and denying any answer that doesn't come with an absolute conviction. And no answer will come from the mind with an absolute conviction, because the mind can't be absolutely certain about anything. And I will just give you a hint, right? What is this all about? What is the answer to every question? You are the answer. You're looking for the answer. I'm looking at you as the answer. The answer is you. Always. That is what we are looking for. It is the answer to all questions. You are the answer to all questions. So stay with this question and let it deepen. Let it become more pure. Let it become more directed, more focused. Let that energy focus to the point where nothing else matters. Right? And setting aside every conceptual answer until you as the answer appears. Not you as you think you are, but you as you really are. Thank you, Tatiana. Creative revolution. Is there any hope for the awakening of narcissists? As soon as I recognize one, I move away, but they always seem to show up, and I find them so frustrating. Tatiana said this question arrived many times before, but never as deeply. Good. Yeah, let the depth of it penetrate you. I don't know, but I know that there is hope for you to awaken. So from the feeling of frustration about running into somebody who's a narcissist, there's a lot of that. We live in a cult of the self. I mean, good God, how many selfies everywhere you look at, selfies and people self-promoting and the like. We live in a narcissistic, self-indulgent culture that is also completely completely alienated from one another, and it has just trivialized and reduced relationships to the most superficial level. Right? Narcissist is a pathology where they just can't see anything except in their own terms. Everything is seen in relationship to themselves. Well, that's the ego. We see it in extremes in somebody we would call a narcissist, but that's all of us. We see everything from our own perspective. Even calling somebody a narcissist, you're standing in a position, right, looking at them, and can you feel that there's a certain sense of superiority there? Once again, the ego has judged. And what's the ego judging? Itself, because that's just itself in a different form. The ego is essentially narcissistic. It creates the world in its own image and likeness. Right? So drop the word narcissist. Right? Because remember, that's referring to a continuum. It's not like, okay, that's it, there's the narcissist. It's not like that. Any kind of pathology, any kind of mental or emotional problem has got nuances to it. People are on a continuum of it, right? And it's like when somebody asks me about a particular illness, and I say, okay, well, I'm not a doctor, so I don't diagnose it, but let's just take the diagnosis out of the picture, because that's a reduction, which has to happen in medical science to reduce it to something that can be something known, that can be treated by something they know how to do or some kind of thing. But it's never that simple. Just be with what's actually happening, and you'll find that there's all sorts of different things happening there. And at the root of all narcissism is the root of all pathology is a denial of yourself. It is a traumatic denial of your own nature, and it can happen at a very severe level that makes someone the only way they feel they can survive in the world is they've gotten into this place where everything has to reference them. Become energy sucks, energy drains. Everything has to be about them. They can't think of anything else. They can't interact in any other way. But notice they have no experience of intimacy. They have no experience of real fun. My mother was like that. You could see it. Even her laughs were forced. They weren't really laughs. She never really laughed. Because everything kept coming back to her. Everything was this self-referencing. Right? So if they're showing up, it means there's a lesson for you to learn here. Right? There's something for you to see. Right? To let go of the label of narcissist, right? And be present. And be grateful for the fact that you notice that there's qualities there that are not inviting, and you move away from them. Great. That's the protective mechanism. There was a time when that wasn't the case. You'd move right into that, and have the energy taken away. So that's real growth. That's real progress. And that will only get better. That will only get wider, and to the point where you won't be attracting those kinds of people anymore. But the starting point is letting go of the judgment. The ego is the narcissist. The ego is the judge of the narcissist. All of that is the egoic mind, which simply wants to create a sense of separation and make itself better or worse. It doesn't care. whether it's better or worse. It just needs to have a relationship in order to define itself. In some cases, I'm better than that because I'm not a narcissist. In some cases, I'm worse than that because I'm even worse than they are, or I don't have what they have, or they can get away with stuff and I can't. There's all sorts of thoughts that can come up about just let it go. What are you feeling when you are thinking about them? Okay? And then also ask, why is this interest of fixing? Can you fix the narcissist? Right? That's a nice projection. The real question is, can I fix myself? I don't like that word fix, but can I bring myself to a higher place here? I don't have to worry about whether I fix them or not. I can try to fix all the narcissists in the world so that I don't run into another one ever again, but that's kind of a waste of time. I mean, Ramana Maharshi said, well, you can cover the whole earth in leather to keep you from stubbing your toe or stepping on a rock, or you can wear shoes. Which is easier? How's that, Susanna? Kingdale Clark, GP, question, brother, if you don't mind. What do you think of the idea one needs to meditate on the mantra I am to get to one's natural state? It is a valid meditation. All mantras serve the purpose of being a focus. They discipline the mind. They kind of domesticate the unruly mind. Right? That's what mantras do. Some mantras have particular things they're supposed to accomplish, right? There's a goal with it and the like. The I am mantra, and even in the Ribhu Gita, it speaks of the only mantra to have is I am Shiva self. And as a mantra that you're repeating, the act of repeating it does have a profound effect. It does have a concentrating effect. It helps to bring someone into more one-pointedness, right? Because it becomes important and becomes a priority in your life, other things fall away that are less important, which is a really beautiful focusing and spiritual maturity. Now, to go one step further is to recognize that I am, right, is to notice that the thought is there because there's a sense that's there. There's a feeling that you would call the sense of being, the feeling of I am. And that's there even without the mantra. And attention can begin to look towards that. And the question is, well, what is that, right? What is that I am? Right? So if we look at the mantras as simply, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to wake up, that's mistaken. It's not going to happen. It's a direction. The awakening is not the result of some process we've done. It's not the reward for good behavior. It is the awakening is a spontaneous event, right? And that's very hard. That's impossible to really describe. So going from the mantra of I am is the recognition that prior to even the mantra, there's a sense I am. Right? And if you take like the mantra from the Ribhu, I am the Brahman self, or I am the Shiva self, I am the self, there's a recognition that that is the truth, even though my mind, my body, everything is operating as if it isn't, is operating differently, is maybe even denial of it. I'm getting towards the recognition of a fact that is there, whether it's believed or not. And then it goes all the way from there's something even aware of the sense of being, the sense I am, that must be there before the thought I am. So before the thought I am can be there, as a mantra or just a passing thought, the sense of being has to be there. Because the thought doesn't think itself. There has to be a sense of being there to which it appears. And that is the I am prior to words, right? And then you notice that in order for even the sense of being to be there, I must exist. And that existence has no motion. It's totally still. It's total emptiness. It has no vibration. Everything vibrates in it and through it, even the sense of I am, but the actual absolute being is not a sense either. And so you come to see that the sense of being, the sense I am, is the firstborn of the absolute. That's the I am that is God, because it is out of that sense I am that the entire universe comes. And that sense I am is simply identified with the universe that it itself has created. And the process of spiritual awakening is turning attention back, moving out of all the identification with all this out here, back through the thought I am and the focus of a mantra, the thought I am, to the sense I am, back to the source of all of it, prior to even the sense I am. You can't even call it I. There's no I, there's not even an I, because it's one and all. Does that answer it for you, Kingdale? Beautiful. Beautiful question. Thank you. Did I get to all of it? Let's see. Get to one's natural state. Well, that absolute that's aware even of the feeling I am is the natural state. And notice, you're the one that's always aware. No matter where you're putting your attention on, you're putting on the I am, you're on the feeling I am, or the most chaotic thing you can possibly look at. You are the one, you are the pure awareness to which it's appearing. You are that. That's the truth of I am Shiva being, which is just the pure awareness in the sky of consciousness in the heart, as it says in the reboot. Hello, Barbara. Quack. Is depression just resistance to emotions, or is it identification with the person? It's both. Depression is simply, let's put it this way. As a child, all children are naturally exuberant, right? Whoa, just expressive, and it just comes out in all sorts of ways. My granddaughter never stops talking. My son and I look at each other and go, just exuberance about this and that. It's all so incredible and wonderful and brilliant and everything, right? Now, she's got great parents, right, that are allowing for that, containing it, but allowing for that. But what if you're in an environment where that exuberance is constantly meets with rejection, being pushed away? Don't do that. Be like that. Be quiet. Children should be seen and not heard, and all of that nonsense, right? What if that's what you got met with? What happens is parts of us they're not allowed to come out, because when they do come out, you get hurt, they get suppressed. Right? When that gets to the point where there's very little for me ways in which I can express myself, it carries into the rest of your life. And that layer that makes sure there's no self-expression taking place, that is a safety mechanism, because it has an association with self-expression means pain. It carries into every aspect of our life. And that's what makes up depression. Depression is this feeling that there's no energy of life. There's no energy to express myself. Even motivation is suppressed. Even the desire to express yourself gets suppressed. I mean, it's a total solution in an environment where you are being terribly suppressed and put down and not allowed any kind of self-expression. It's the perfect solution. It's the perfect safety mechanism. Just shut it all off and not even let you be motivated to do it. So all of that energy is being pushed down. That's the nature of depression. And the only way to get to it is to start heal it, is to start allowing yourself to feel your own feelings. And at first that's really hard. You go, I don't have any, there aren't any. People who are depressed tell me that. I say, what does that feel like, not having any? Right? Or I'll go to the body. Can you feel your body? What's going on in your body? Can you feel tension or nervousness or anything? It just feels kind of dead and numb. Okay. Feel the numbness. Can you be with that numbness? Describe that numbness. Right? What's happening when I do that is I'm getting people out of the concept of depression and into the actual experience of their bodies. Right? Because one of the ways in which depression sustains itself is to keep you in the mind, keep you out of feeling, because that's the danger place. And the deeper the depression, it just means it's done more. The nervous system has done everything it possibly can to keep you from feeling, because every feeling is dangerous. Right? So, understanding that, the key to the opening the door to healing is to begin to let yourself become safe to feel, because that's what created it in the first place. And it's always about creating a safe environment. In my view, in my discovery in inner reconciliation, it's all about creating a safe environment. And at first that can be very, very hard. But eventually the nervous system gets the word and begins to respond to it, because the nervous system is adaptive by nature. If the environment changes, it will change to correspond to that environment. Right? And the reason it hasn't changed is we're still maintaining the suppressing environment. Unwittingly, unconsciously, we don't really realize we're doing it, but we are. And that's why it's still there. So we begin ourselves to become safe with ourselves. It's safe for me to feel my feelings. I still may not be able to express them anywhere, because that's really dangerous, but I can just let myself feel them. Right? I can be safe to do that. And then that environment that is depressed, constrained, constricted, oppressed, really, begins to expand. And as it does, so does all the energy. Right? And then stuff can start bubbling out, and things can start happening that you weren't thinking could possibly happen before. It's not necessarily a quick road. It can be. It's another place where I would use EFT, because EFT just communicates safety through touch. It's constantly giving the message, I am safe. Now, if people do it even without saying anything, just walking around the house doing this. I heard a beautiful story of a woman who had severe OCD. It took her 2 hours to leave the house. All the things she did and redid and everything, obsessive compulsive, what is it, OCD disorder, yeah. And so the EFT practitioner, who is very progressive, like him very much, Steve Wells actually, I think it was David Lake, his partner, said, okay, just do this while you're going and checking everything in the house. Don't even try to change it. And she did. After a week, it only took her an hour to leave the house. It was down to half hour. It was down to 15 minutes. And she said, well, how long does it take most people to leave the house? He says, 10, 15 minutes. Right? She didn't do anything, no specific process. The nervous system was just constantly getting the message, you are safe. And of course, OCD is you're constantly checking and rechecking because you don't feel safe. And so everything has to be done a bunch of times. Did I do that? I don't know. Because there's no this feeling of safety. But if, even in the act of doing that, there's this message coming into the environment, you are safe, the environment shifted. And the nervous system has to respond to that. It has to adapt to it, because that's its nature. It just has to. So that's really what it's all about. That's why I use EFT, is because it does create the safe environment. And it does it through touch. So, it can even bypass the mind. People don't even have to understand what we're doing. So thank you for that. Thank you. Jerry, thanks so much. Yeah, that was helpful. Good, good. Thanks for bringing Satsang to the people, GP. Appreciation from Sweden. Oh, you're so welcome. Merck, good to see you. Dominique, severe physical pain, but recently the sensation of spinning of the spine combined with profound and existential terror. EFT and other therapies not helped. An energetic knot in the coccyx. Any advice, GP? Well, again, with severe pain, I can't make the kind of recommend. I have to prelude all of my recommendations with the fact that I am not taking the responsibility of a medical person, because I'm not a doctor. I have no experience in that regard whatsoever. So I deal with it completely on an existential and energetic level, which, by the way, is not acknowledged by medical science. When something like EFT doesn't work, it's only because it's been applied in the wrong context. And many EFT practitioners see it as simply in therapeutic terms. So, which means that they go in, they're going to tap, they're expecting to get a certain result, right? And so I'm going to tap in order to ease this pain or fear or whatever it is, right? And despite the fact that the tapping will, in fact, communicate safety to the nervous system, the overall energy of expectation is so focused that they're at counter purposes. The energy is not really free to move because you're trying to force it in a particular direction. This is where the yoga of allowing becomes, I just have to be with it. Now, once I know it's really hard to be with physical pain. Of course it is. You can't do it except in small doses. And again, this isn't a substitute for the regular kind of medical care. Right? So, but that said, I know that the pain isn't there all the time. It never is. It does have ebbs and flows. So there are times when you can just simply be with it. When the pain's there, don't have an expectation. Just tap. Side of your fingers, step on your face. Tap like this. There's a whole variety of different ways. No expectations. Don't put any rules on it. Don't put any context on it. Just allow the tapping to have an effect, whatever effect that might be. Now, I myself have experienced a profound existential terror. It was that terror that led me to my night on the bridge and my spiritual awakening 50 years ago. It changed everything. It just struck me so deeply, I wanted to die. Right? So, in healing that kind of stuff, you have to recognize that there is something that deeply traumatized that is in terror. It is so afraid of something. It could be the physical death because of some kind of event that happened in the past. It could also be just a fear of humiliation. For me, that was what it was. It wasn't so much physical death. I would have welcomed it at the time. And I'm still not really afraid of it, right? But the sense of humiliation, of just being ridiculed, of being just nothing, less than nothing, worse than death, right? Just see if you can be with that when that terror comes up. See if you can just feel it in the body. And even ask the question, what is it you're terrified of? Because notice, when it comes up, you want to get away from it as fast as you possibly can. You just want to move away from it, right? But at the essence of that terror, there is a terrified little self there that doesn't need to be pushed away or ran away from. It needs to be embraced. What is it in you that is so terrified? I will often use the metaphor of, imagine you're sitting somewhere and some little child is utterly, totally terrified. They run up to you. What do? Oh, God, get away. Boy, you're really a downer. Here, read this book. Go to this seminar. You don't do that to a little child. You don't talk them out of it. You pick her up and set her on her lap. Hug her, rub her. It's okay. It's okay. Rub her back. You stroke her hair. It's okay. You're safe. It's okay. Right? And eventually, the child will calm down because they sense that safety. They feel that safety and start to come down. Maybe when it starts to come down, the whole story will come out. It will just flow out of them of what they're terrified of. Other times, it may just kind of dissipate, and they'll hop off your lap and run off playing. Right? Think of that terrified energy as a little being in you, a disowned part of you that's just crying in the basement. And you'll get a different perspective about it. That it really is at the root a part of us to be embraced. Because our natural state is not terror. Our natural state is confidence. Our natural state is not pain. It is peace. So all of these are energies in the nervous system that aren't to be rejected. The rejection of ourselves is what created them. And as we're rejecting them, we're tapping in order to get rid of them. What we're doing is doing the same thing to them that has been done to them right from the beginning. That's what I meant previously when I said that unwittingly we are creating we are sustaining the same container that got created by our parents and in the environment when we were young. And we're just ignorantly sustaining it. So my job is to dismantle that so you start creating a different environment. And this is the environment of self-acceptance, of unconditional love, perfect allowing. And then you find that which is allowing is the pure awareness that is your true self, in which there is no pain and there is no terror. Does that help, Dominique? Dominic or Dominique? Dominic. Looks like a guy, so I think it's Dominic, but I don't know. So, and going on with the spinning of the spine, all of these things, all sorts of sensations in the body, you treat them all exactly the same way. Don't let the mind go, oh God, now this, now what I got to get, I got to get rid of it. It's like, don't pay attention to the way the mind does it. Do what you need to do on a practical level with medical advice and but just see if you can implement this. Okay? And of course, I am available for private sessions to help work through with people, and I do classes and the like. If the private session is too much. Beautiful. Tatiana, thank you, dear GP, and yes. Good. Hey, Hendrik, good to see you. Susanna, yes, G. Thanks, G. Yes, creating more space to observe what arises, and yes, I am growing. Yep, you are. I can testify to that. King Deal says, thanks, G. Oh, you're very welcome. Facebook user, do you feel the ego can come into alignment with our higher soul wisdom? They can become partners together with our ever-beloved mystery to bring forth unity out of this separation we have lived for eons of time. I'm going to say it's a yes and a no. And when I think what's happening is that the sense of self, right? Our everyday sense of self, me, GP, doing satsang, or you do whatever you happen. I don't know your name, just says Facebook user. That our everyday sense of self that we got in the world and we do this or that, can that harmonize with the deeper sense of self, with the true self? Well, yeah, the answer is yes, of course it can. That's not the ego. And this is where some genuine education and guidance is required. The real and self-inquiry. What is the ego? The ego is simply a bunch of thoughts about I. It is a bunch of I thoughts. The ego cannot come into alignment with anything because it doesn't exist as a thing. Right? The flow of thoughts, liberated from the concept of an ego, naturally comes into flow with the true self. And it's not even a higher self. If there's a higher self and a lower self, then there's two selves. How can there be two selves? Are you two people? You can't be. So you are always the higher self, observing the actions of what you're calling the lower self and have identified with. So you think of yourself as the lesser self, and that somehow out there, there's a higher self. I'm telling you, you are the higher self. And what you're referring to as the lower self, the everyday self, or the ego is nothing but patterns of thought, emotion, and sensation. And you have simply projected the sense of self, which belongs to the higher self, onto a bunch of things that don't have a self. I always use the example because it works really well. The sense of I that appears, I like this, I don't like that, as a thought, has no substance to it whatsoever unless you identify with it. The actual appearing is simply the word, I want this, I want to be the higher self, I like this, I don't like that, right? Has no more substance to it than Siri. You know, ask Siri or whoever the equivalent, Alexa, Google, the equivalent on Android is. Ask a question. And it'll say, I'm sorry, I don't know. Now, there's no I there. You can watch a cartoon character and they'll talk about I, right? But there's nobody there. It's just the words, the appearance, the thoughts of I, but the actual animating principle, the actual consciousness is not in that I, it's witnessing that I. But that sense I am that I referred to earlier has identified itself with the thought. Now, the thought itself is not a problem. It's just there. It's just part of the way that the whole energy system works. But when the I am takes the self, the selfness, the reality of consciousness, which is real and is conscious and is present and is self-aware, and identifies with the I thought, in that moment, the illusion of the ego is created. Prior to that, there is no ego. It's just a flow of thoughts, right? The thoughts all revolving around I. The sum total of all thoughts is what we call mind. That subset of thoughts that revolve around I, which is actually most of them, is what we call the ego. But it's only a problem and only becomes something that seems like an entity and is an influence over that flow is when the sense I am, which is not the ego, identifies with the I thoughts. In that moment, the ego becomes an active element, an influential element in the nervous system, even though it has no actual existence. Now, the way to harmonize or align with what you call the higher self, which I call your true self, which is what you really are and are right now and always have been and can never not be, is to disidentify with the I thoughts. So the I thoughts themselves, once liberated from the projection of the ego, will begin to conform themselves around the true I. Right now, this belief in the ego, it's this belief in myself as a limited, mortal, shivering little thing stuck in a universe. This belief is making all the I thoughts revolve around it, so it appears to be an actual real thing. When that dissolves, all those thoughts will reorganize themselves. Right? And it happens progressively. This is not me. This is not me. This is not me. I am more than that. I am not my conditioning. I am not the body. I'm not my thoughts. And little by little, that sense I am aligns itself more and more with the truth of your being. So it isn't the ego that does that, because the ego doesn't actually exist. Neither does the mind. It is simply a flow of thoughts conforming into a particular pattern. It is the sense of I am identified with it that is the ego. The dissolving of the ego is the sense I am turning around back towards its source, walking back home. All of this dissolves, and then all of it becomes myself. And that's the alignment I think that you're going for. How's that, Facebook user? How's that, everybody, actually? The discussion of the ego is a confusing one to many, many people. And the only reason is the nature of thinking is to make things actual things. Like the ego is a thing, right? Where is it? Where's the ego? Somebody show me an ego. It's a concept, nothing more. It doesn't exist. How do I get rid of my ego? Show me your ego, and I'll get rid of it for you. Oh, I can't find it anywhere. There you go. I've gotten rid of it for you. Does that help? Facebook user. You're very welcome, King Dale Clark. Play on. Hey, G, this Friday I want a date with a girl. I believe probably freaked out a bit. I was kind of nervous and limited in my explaining, so maybe she got a bit confused. I know that, there was more to it. Maybe you shouldn't spontaneously start to talk about the subject with anyone, but where'd you go? Just happened. Well, then there's nothing you can do about it. Let it go. I think I really covered it the last time, even though I didn't have the rest of it there. Great. King Dale Clark, GP, what do you think of David Hawkins' letting go technique? He says one can focus on the feelings, let's say of depression, like you said, feel it without naming or judging it in the body until it leaves. Yeah, I agree with all of that up to the point where you say until it leaves, because now you're imposing something on it, right? When I say be with it, I've got no agenda, right? To let go to me means you take your hands off. And this is a problem I had with all of the release, that school of thinking about releasing, is that there was this mostly spoken and even sometimes unspoken goal to get the feeling to go away. And most everybody I ever knew who did it, that was their expectation. And I know a couple of them that I worked with, they were just absolutely amazed when I said, no, it may not go away. That's not the point. To let go means you no longer are exercising any influence on it at all. Right? If I'm holding a beach ball underwater and it's taking a lot of energy and I finally let it go and it bobs up to the surface, it may float away. It may keep bumping into me for a while, right? But I don't grab it then and try to push it away, because now I'm not letting go anymore. To let go, take your hands off, period. No intention, no goal, no expectation of a result. Because if there's that slight expectation of a result, then you've created a conflict with it. You're sitting waiting for it to go away. And what does that mean? You're holding on to it. So this is the key. This is where it gets into a deeper dimension, more energetic and even more spiritual, is that I'm really letting go. Right? I am not putting any determination on it whatsoever, which means I am now totally free of it. It can do what it wants with me or to me or around me, or it can leave. It doesn't matter. Get more intense. Doesn't matter. My hands are off. So that's the only issue I have with David Hawkins, which I do with all the other release techniques. Well, that and his scale of enlightenment and things like that, which I think is kind of useless. And also based on his Christian faith. So he puts the Bible higher than Ramana Maharshi or Buddha, which is like, what? Okay. Anyway. So hopefully that answers it for you. So when I say let go, I mean let go. Hands off. Period. which means I don't even have a sense of what I think it should do. Okay? And the truth of the matter is, even as we let go, it's going to stay there for a while because it's part of the nervous system. The nervous system can take some time to allow that energy to transform. The letting go creates a safe space. If you really let go of it and say, you can be here or not be here, right? Nah, you've set it free, haven't you? And at that point, the environment has changed, and the energy will shift. Right? More stuff may come up. It may dissolve immediately. The energy will shift because you've shifted the environment in which the energy is living. And so it can't help it. Right? It's going to expand to fill the room it's in. So thanks, says Quack. You're very welcome. If you could start a dating site for non-duality people, would be cool. Yes, dating with nobody. That'd be interesting. There's no such thing as dating site. Yeah, that'd be funny. Carl Lucy, thanks, GP. Your answer helped a lot. Will you still be able to do satsang from the White House? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Maybe we'll have some enlightened Secret Service agents. What do you think? Go back. Amazing. Oh, thank you. Yes, beautiful, says Facebook user. Plans. Oh, I missed your answer. My YouTube app crashed and also my internet went down. I thought my message was erased. No, I got it. Loved it. Oh, okay. Jojo, I just can't imagine telling somebody what ego. Show me your ego. But seriously, that was a perfect illustration and reminder for me. Thank you. Yes, I'm using it here, right? And notice I said, what ego? Show me your ego. After a long discourse building up to that point to explain and deconstruct the ego and what it was. Then you can get to that point. But yeah, you don't just throw that out there. All right. Oh, there is no ego. Or show me your ego. Right? You just don't throw that out. This is something I've said a million times, and I will say it again. And having a nice conversation about this with a dear friend just recently. There's a preparation necessary to come into this depth of inquiry. Traditionally, it was only taught. There was no YouTube. There was no papers. It was only taught in temples, in ashrams, and in monasteries, because it requires a preparation of the heart, a preparation of the nervous system, and a preparation of the mind. It requires that. There has to be a transformation of character, a transformation of the inner environment, so that when the deepest truths are presented, they're not just received by the same old context. That's the problem we're experiencing in the West. That's why there's such a lot of bad non-dual teaching out there, because it's been the exposure to the information without still stuck in a context which then appropriated that information and misinterpreted it. And as a result, it's done more damage than good. I mean, the same thing is true. The whole law of attraction was that, right? I mean, that kind of thing of your effective thought and emotion on your experience has been practiced by yogis for thousands of years, with proper preparation, and always warned, this is not an end in and of itself. But it comes over here, it's completely diluted. And what happens? Well, when it first started back at the turn of the 20th century, with the beginning of the New Thought movement, it was all about healing, to emulate Christ. So it was always about getting healing. So that became the context. It still had around it, the moral environment of the Victorian period and that sort of stuff. So it still had a bit of a container around it. So it didn't become overtly materialistic. But over time, it did when it started happening. Well, starting with, Think and Grow Rich and all that, that horrible book, right? The focus became all on the materialism. It became all about the money. And of course, Napoleon Hill, it turns out, was a con man anyway. None of the things he said actually happened. Funny. But then it goes through various kinds of transformation. It emerges in the 60s, which is kind of just the budding of this kind of stuff, but mostly about success. Think and Grow Rich, because that was published I think in 1937, somewhere around there. But then in the 80s it started to explode. In the 90s we had the law of attraction. Now it's everywhere. And then 2000 the movie The Secret, right, which popularized that term, and it all got reduced to me getting what I want. It became totally appropriated by the ego, because the actual reality behind it requires a completely different state of mind, a completely different intellectual and cultural framework to be understood. And it requires the protection and development and maturation of an environment like an ashram under the guidance of a real guru. Otherwise you get lost, which is what we have, right? I mean, had, people spend their fortunes on some teacher trying to, teach them how to manifest the life of their dreams. And they end up, losing. It's despicable. It's horrible what has happened. And you think some of them were con men, but most of them really believed it. They simply believed it. And so it became very influential and very, very powerful. I know many of the teachers from The Secret personally. They're friends of mine. And there's not one of them that says it was a terrible, they did not like it. It was a terrible dilution, a terrible watering down. I mean, while they enjoyed the notoriety it brought them and the increase in business, they really kind of distanced themselves that this isn't really, it isn't like that. So at any rate, where did I start with be seriously perfectly? I forget. I forgot where I even started with that. I got off on a tangent. So I guess I'll just have to let this tangent end without tying it up in a bow. Oh yeah, somewhere around the wood ego, that kind of thing. Anyway, King Dale Clark, thanks, GP. I also don't find the levels of consciousness David talking about as particularly useful. I don't think it matters if one's arms show strength when a statement is made true or false. Yes, it's very true. And of course, the muscle testing and that sort of stuff is subject to prejudice, and it's connected to the whole nervous system. So it's going to be reflective of the conditioning. Yes, there's some truth in it. There's some value in those kinds of things. You can bypass some of the stuff in the mind, but the idea that it is the arbiter of truth, that this will always tell you the truth, is simply very, 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 very misleading. I mean, it shows the part of us that wants the sense of concrete truth. It wants a sense. I mean, we all want it. We want that solid reference point that isn't going to move, right? That's what truth represents to us. And that's why we have belief systems. And it might be a religious belief or a political or an economic or some kind of a social thing or a racial thing. We want to have these things there. This is an absolute truth. The world is flat, because it gives me a sense of stability, a reference point that I can live. Because right now, all the reference points have fallen away. And so we're kind of clinging to them. But the mind needs a reference point. Without it, it goes crazy, right? Because it has to have someplace, a stake in the ground, for everything to be relative to. Well, non-duality doesn't blow that away. It says the reference point is the self. You, the consciousness that is aware of the mind, is the reference point. You are the answer. You are the reference point. Right? And that becomes the arbiter of what is true and what is false, not your arm. And I've seen people do it this way. I've seen people do it like this with their arms. I've seen all sorts of different ways in which people have, done the muscle testing. But for the most part, it's you cannot come to a real sense of the truth except with yourself, because, spoiler alert, You are the truth. The truth is existence itself. It is not something that's known, it's what you are. Hello, David. Deep gratitude. Oh, same to you. Same to you, my friends. GP, your thoughts on water fasting to seek, as some say, God? They say it gives them this feeling, this connection. Is this true? Is it again another mind trap? It's another mind trap. Yes. There are health benefits, obviously. And if you do a fast and you're going without food, the body's going to have an effect. It's going to have an effect on the mind. It's going to have an effect on perception, right? It will have an effect. To project upon that effect some kind of special state that is more spiritual is misguided, right? It's just another state that comes and goes. And yes, if I drink nothing but water for a week, I'm going to feel different. Duh. Is that different more spiritual? No. It very well may be that it clears out a lot, some accumulated toxins that have an effect on energy and maybe even clouded thinking, right? So there may be a sense of clarity there, but I always bring your attention back to what is it that's aware of the clarity? What is it that recognizes clarity versus confusion? There's something else there. That something else is the one seeing, oh, it's clear. Oh, this is the effect this has had. There's a consciousness there that has to be aware of it. Clarity doesn't know itself. Something bigger, you can say that's clear, that's unclear, that's confusion, that's crystal clarity. There's something there that sees it all and recognizes it all. What's that? And notice that while it transcends all of those, because it takes all of those in, is perfect clarity. And it's never anything but that, to the point where you can't even call it clarity. All you can call it is truth. How's that? Yeah. So all of these practices, be it water, all of the practices, and I do stuff. I'll do some fasting. I'll do some juice fasting. I got negligent. I do now every day I do a beaker, about 32 ounces of this green smoothie, because I know my body needs it. It's probably a week or two's worth of salad in a single beaker. I make 2 of them, and I drink one the next day. So I'm drinking one of these every day, because my last set of blood tests, they said my cholesterol was a bit high, and they wanted, we should look at medication. You can't cure that through diet and exercise. I go, oh, come on, please. I've been through this before. So I, again, just shift up the diet. But I don't expect any great spiritual revelations out of it. I just expect my, the cholesterol to go back down to where it should be. Right? This is the thing. We believe that spiritual awakening is an altered state of consciousness. It's some state we get into, right? But if it's a state that we get into, it obviously is a state we can get out of. It comes and goes. It had a beginning. The truth cannot have a beginning. Enlightenment cannot have a beginning. There can't be a moment of enlightenment. This is totally paradoxical, and the mind can't get it. But awakening simply awakens to itself that it has always been awake. Because if awakening had a beginning, it would have an end. It has to be timeless. Reality has to be absolutely timeless. Anything that has a beginning will have an end. So any state of mind we get into, however beautiful, however revelatory, is still transient. Right? If it comes and goes, it can't be real. Those are words of Ramana Maharshi. That's what opened the door to Papaji for his enlightenment. So this is how we inquire more deeply. Oh, I'm not seeking an altered state of mind. This is the limitation of plant medicine, which has, under the right conditions, can have a very positive effect psychologically and emotionally, just as changing your diet can, and other kinds of stuff. But it too is something that comes and goes. Everything that comes and goes cannot be the truth. It cannot be you, right? Because you're watching it come and go. You're not coming and going. This is the realization. The true I is always here. It's always been you. And so it becomes a realization, not an achievement, not a state that one gets into. I believe this is what Buddha was referring to when he talked of the personal realization of Buddha knowledge and the delight in it. Right? So it is a revelation, a realization, a parting, seeing what has always been. It's a stepping out of the field of time into the timelessness, and from that timelessness, the coming and going of time is witnessed. You are now the Shiva being witnessing the wheel, standing in the middle, dancing in it. Thanks, GP, for always answering, brother. Appreciate it. Yeah, you're very welcome. Crispin, that my heart craves the truth. Dominic says, "Thank you for your answer. You're very welcome." Yes, yeah. And when a heart craves the truth, it will find it, guaranteed. It's always the distraction to other things that keeps it at bay. Let's see, GP, talking about law of attraction, Joe Dispenza is considered by many as some sort of con man. He cares about just getting the money from his followers. I read a book by him and Dr. I can't pronounce the name. The doctor from Hawaii used Ho'oponopono to cure patients, apparently. Yes, that's the story of Ho'oponopono, and that's not the law of attraction. It's got nothing to do with it. The law of attraction proponents, and I don't know Joe Dispenza personally. I can't comment about his integrity about it. Does he actually believe it? I mean, if he actually believes it, then he's not a con man. He's just really convinced about it. But there's this mixture of quantum theory, which it's not. It has nothing to do with quantum theory, and some neurology and epigenetics and all sorts of things get kind of combined in this new age approach, which is really quite materialistic, which means I can take all this esoteric knowledge and I can use it to get a new car, right? There's no moral integrity in that. As you can see, there's no moral compass in that. There's no sense of community. There's no sense of other. Right? I heard Neil Donald Walsh talking about the law of attraction. He made the same comment I did. He said, I listened to it. Yeah, it all makes sense. But that entire movie, he was talking about the movie The Secret. It's the whole thing. Nobody ever talked about world peace, about feeding everyone, about taking care of each other. Nobody talked about that. It was all personal goals. And I think that's in fact why it has just wreaked such havoc. And if the law of attracting these good things in your life was the case, why is the world worse off than when The Secret came out, 2006? So the other story of the doctor, and I can't pronounce that name, in Hawaii, who used Ho'oponopono to cure the patients, that feels more true to me because it matches the experiences of the early on in the New Thought movement. That the original churches, Unity, Christian Science, and Science of Mind, which are all related. They all came really from the same source. But the emphasis was on healing, and it was the metaphysical healing of doing that, taking it on yourself, not attributing it to the individual, but kind of seeing. So it became communal, and that's more powerful because he wasn't just trying to fix somebody. He was seeing it as a kind of a universal consciousness thing. So he got also involved with who's the other, Joe Vitale, who's also got into it and really wanted to promote it. But neither one of those two really understood. They took it in the context of the whole law of attraction thing, and personal gain and personal wealth, that sort of thing. So I think they missed the point of that. I think it's actually better than 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 what they did with it. But it but still, I think it's important for us to see through that. The problem is that the law of attraction was peddled on the basis of materialistic selfishness. And that's all it did was promote it. It has no moral compass. Matter of fact, it talks about The Secret right at the beginning, all these guys, these captains of industries who used it, to grow their fortunes, like Rockefeller and Ford and stuff like that. And these were horrific people. These were horrible people. Inflicted all sorts of stuff, sent out goon squads to kill people to keep unions from happening. These are not nice people. So if that's the case, then law of attraction is another function of immoral. It's worse. I mean, it's an atomic bomb in the hands of madmen, which we already have. Don't need any more of that. Right? And distracts people from the real truth. Even though on a certain level there's truth in it, right? The motivation behind it is a total corruption. And that's why this stuff needs preparation and guidance from a genuine teacher in order for anybody to even begin to approach it. And ultimately, you don't even bother approaching it. You leave things where they are. It's because Michael Brown said that, in enlightenment, you do have the power to move mountains, but you also realize the mountain's fine just where it is. There's no need. Ava, thanks for being here and sharing light of wisdom. Gee, priceless gifts. You're very welcome. It's funny you said getting a new car. That's what Joe said he got in his book. Yeah. That whole thing is so easy to dismantle. It's pretty funny. I think he said he manifested it. Yeah. Everything's a manifestation. The belief that I personally control it is a delusion. The doctor known as Dr. Hugh Len, in short, is known to be illegitimate. He wouldn't call himself a guru, but someone who is real about what they preached, while Joe is seen as someone as a hanger-on. Yeah. Sorry, GP, I meant Joe Vitale, not Joe Dispenza. Not Dispenza. Okay. Yeah, and it's just the perspective. I was talking about it earlier. The preparation is so that there's a context to receive it, right? As Christ said, you can't put new wine in old wineskins. It tastes horrible, right? And this is the problem. Without proper preparation, we get something like this, like Ho'oponopono, which is for real, and other things like that, metaphysical healing and the like. But it gets usurped, it gets pulled into a context, and its actual meaning is completely missed. It gets appropriated, it gets completely misinterpreted and put to purposes that it was never intended for. The whole law of attraction is that. And prior to that, the capacity that the captains of industry learned how to manipulate people, right? Through carrot, through threats. As I said, these were not good people. That's why I've tried to read recently, tried to reread Think and Grow Rich to see if there was anything. I couldn't get through it. It was so disgusting to me with the emphasis on it. And since having learned that Napoleon Hill's history, there's no record of him actually ever working for Dale Carnegie like he claimed. The whole story of the book appears to be somebody who was actually arrested for fraud, had to leave someplace. I think it might have been Australia. No, that was another guy. Actually had to leave the country, leave somewhere because of a warrant and stuff. I mean, it's just it's a dead end. It's a dead end. And on that note, I think I will bring this all to a close. And thank you all once again for being here. Thank you for joining me in this. You make satsang possible. Satsang doesn't happen without an ear to hear it. And so I'm so glad your ears are here and open, and your hearts are open, and your minds are open, and you are truly willing to enter deeply into this inquiry that reveals all wisdom, that revelation of wisdom that easily discerns the tares from the wheat, the nonsense from the stuff of substance, the misuse to the proper use. So until next time, namaste, everyone.